Hey guys, well Maticstaker is dead. Well, not quite dead, as you can see on the screen. Got a contract balance of 129,000, and that's been dropping. I think by the time I get to the end of recording this video, it's going to hit zero, and there's going to be a lot of people who lost money. So the question is, what happened? Was Maticstaker a rug pull? Was it a scam? Did you get scammed? Did something happen that was unexpected here? And my answer to that is really no. So if you are surprised by the fact that Maticstaker has run out of money and is not going to pay people what they promise here on the front page, or what it seems to indicate here on the website, then I think you need to understand a little bit about what Maticstaker is and what ROI apps are and how they work. So if that's of interest to you, please keep watching. As always, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. You can see the disclaimer up on the screen. This is my own opinion and for information purposes only. So, Maticstaker, how do we get to the stage with 14 million Matic invested that the contract balance is about to go to zero? To understand that, you need to understand what an ROI app is. And the thing is, when you look at these crypto products, you need to dig in a level deeper. Don't just look at the front page and go, hey, I'm getting 20% out of this. Is it a scam? Is it not a scam? All of the information is here. All the information is available. Just need to look at it. So let's take a look. The first clue is the audit. Now the audit page here will essentially tell you one critical piece of information. Let's look at these high issues here. The high issue, the system used is called ROI and must be considered high risk. So what does ROI mean? Well, exactly what it says there. Users' principal deposits cannot be withdrawn. Users can get dividends and referral commission. Dividends are paid from deposits of other users. And that's the critical thing there. Dividends are paid from the deposits of other users. When you look at this page and you say, well, I'm going to get returns of 20% on my money, where does that 20% come from? This is not a financial investment. This is not creating value. All it's doing is taking the deposits of people who join later and paying people who join earlier. So if you saw my video around are ROI apps Ponzi schemes, you'll know that yes, they are Ponzi schemes. And to go into how that works, let's look at this spreadsheet that I showed in that video. Just a quick recap. So imagine person 1 deposits $100, person 2 deposits $100, person 3 deposits $100, and you have a one of these ROI DAPPs where you're getting, say, 20% back on your investment. So now it's time for this 20% to be paid. This person withdraws 120%, and you got $180 left in the contract. So he goes and tells 3 people they deposit $100 each. And now look at that contract balance going up. But now person 2 and person 3 want to be paid. So person 2 and 3 get paid. Person 4 gets paid. Person 5 gets paid. But now look, there's no money in the contract for person 6. So that's really how it works. You're paying that money to future investors, to early investors from future investors. And I've shown this before, but what is the how many people do you need for the rate to sustain the investors? So if you've got a return rate of 120%, so 20% paid back on top of the initial investment, you need one person essentially to be the sucker. That's that person 6 for the 5 people who make money. If you go to 125% return, it's 4 to 1, 150%, it's 2 to 1, 200%, it's one person to pay the bill for every one person who makes money. So let's take a look at the Maticstaker website and see how that works out. Well, we've got rates of 20.8% daily, which means that the total you're making is 290%. So that means under this model, you are basically saying that two people need to put in money for every one person that makes that money, and that is completely unsustainable. So that is essentially what we're looking at. It is a Ponzi scheme, and you need to be aware that it's a Ponzi scheme because a lot of people seem to be posting, seem to not have done the research and not understand what these ROI apps are. They are Ponzi schemes. They pay back um, early investors with money that future investors pay into the contract, and that means that eventually the contract will run out of money paying off early investors, and the people who come in late will lose money, and late may be as late as 2 weeks ago. Basically, if you put 2 weeks ago, you put money into one of these, say the silver um, contract here, and you said that, oh, I'm going to make my money in 14 days, come back with 1309%. You're going to find when you go to withdraw later today that money is not there. So I think you need to be clear. People need to be clear. If you're investing in this, it's not a scam. That they're not walking away with your money. Then they're not doing a rug pull. It's not a rug pull. It's a Ponzi scheme, and just be aware of what that means. It's all on the front page. It's all visible there. If you click on the contract, you can look at the contract, and you can see how much is left in the contract. This has been open for a while, so 852. Look at that. It's just dropped down to 176 in the space of I don't know, maybe about 45 minutes. So I think we might just be witness to the very end of this contract. But you can go here. You can look at the code. Someone commented on another a video I made. Well, why is the money running out? Have they changed the code? Did something not get picked up in the audit? It's all there in the audit. The audit tells you this is an ROI app. When you see ROI app, remember Ponzi scheme. This is an ROI app. There's no value being created. It's new investors paying old investors, and that's how it works. There's nothing here that's hidden. It's all in the audit. It's all in the contract. You can look at the contract code and see that. You can see how much they have in the balance. So I just read the MATIC value, but the balance 122,000, even lower. And you can see basically what you're in for. So looking at that, one other thing I want to show you just around how ROI DAPPs work and why I'm interested in them. Because so it's a Ponzi scheme. So what? Don't put money in a Ponzi scheme. Well, I think there's a really interesting case to be made here for these ROI DAPPs as a way, an investment that could be profitable if you control risk, if you understand how to control risk. And the reason that they're attractive to me, and the reason why I'm spending time looking at these and putting some money in them and trying to see whether or not they can be profitable, really, is because everything is here. The risk is very predictable. So if you take a look at what they're promising, and if you can find a model for how the DAPP will actually pay back, if you come in at the right time and you exit at the right time, you can make some money. So I want to look at, well, what are the lessons that I've learned from Maticstaker, knowing that it is an ROI app, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's not going to last forever, it's eventually going to collapse. What are the lessons that we can learn? So I've shown this before, put the link in the description just to a kind of a high level rough spreadsheet that shows you kind of if you populate this for a ROI app, then you can kind of get an idea of what the life expectancy is going to be. So for just a general trend, you can see this is showing a generic ROI app with 7% return and basically 100,000 MATIC investment per day. So you can see that table. New MATIC investments, you can see the amount of MATIC investment is going up. The amount of daily withdrawals is also going up as people get paid for their interest. Total contract balance starts going up. Then at some point it starts plateauing before it inevitably crashes down to zero. And if you basically take an assumption that the amount of new investments is going to be a consistent thing, like you get 100,000 per day or whatever that number is, this line keeps going up. So the total invested keeps going up, and that total invested is basically this amount here, total staked amount. That keeps going up. And meanwhile, the green line here, the total contract balance goes up for a little while, plateaus, and starts dropping away. So I find this very interesting because it means that although these ROI apps are risky, the risk is pretty easy to quantify and to calculate. So you can actually come up with a model, and if you get in at the right time and you understand, if you can calculate, well, how long is the contract likely to be in place, and there's a couple of risks there. The starting risk is, well, is that contract going to be used? Is that going to take off? Are people going to be investing in it? Or basically another way of phrasing that is, are the early investors going to be paid off, or are they just going to lose their money in the contract? There are instances of RO apps that have just died. People have stopped investing in them, and you never get your money out. So you need a proven uptake to be demonstrated at the beginning of the ROI app. The other thing you need to make sure is you're not too late. So if you are investing at this point, when the total contract balance is starting to flatten out, when it's starting to drop, you're probably not going to get your money back. And that's especially the case for something like Maticstaker, where this total contract earnings, the daily earnings, began, I believe, at around 8% and has been steadily increasing. So if that's the case, you've got to imagine this curve here is not going to be a nice little bow curve. It's going to start out pretty flat, and then it's going to just drop really quickly. So you've got to be able to calculate that your curve is actually going to look more like this. And the other thing to remember is it doesn't really matter how much money is going in as to how long the contract is going to last. So just give an example of this. So right now I've got $100,000 under this model going in every day. The contract is going to last exactly the same amount of time as if you make that 10 million. So let's make that 10 million up front, and 10 million, so that's 1 million, 10 million daily investments. You actually have the same period of time, and the reason for that is, basically the concern here is the rate. So if the rate is higher or lower, that's going to determine the life. It doesn't matter if people putting $1 in a day or $10 million in a day. It's still going to last the same amount, assuming that that's a consistent rate over time. So I wouldn't even worry for a lot of these contracts how much people are putting in. That is an indication of how popular it is, and definitely the more popular the contract is. But basically the figure of risk here is this daily withdrawal rate. If it's at 7% here, you can see the contract is going to last from today, the 8th of March, all the way to the 3rd of April. Less than 28 days, I think, or approximately 28 days. You can just double check that. 29 days is what I have under this basically approximation model. 28 or 29 days is how long it would last at 7%. You jack this up to 20% rate, you can see that green line is not going to last long at all. That is going to come back at just around 10 days, roughly speaking. Now, in the case of Maticstaker, you have that initial lockup period. So if people are locking up for 14 days at the beginning before they're starting to get their returns, then you basically add that 14 days onto that, and you come up with around 24 days. Plus, obviously, you've got people locking in for longer. You've got people coming out on the plan where they're extracting daily. So that takes us roughly to where we are, which is, I think, 28 days from the beginning of the contract. It's about to collapse. So that's how you can do that calculation on risk based on the rate. And if you're choosing to invest in one of these ROI apps, I think the best way of doing it is to choose something with a lower rate, some sustainability, and then try to work out where you are on the curve. So you can find information in the contract balance. You can, based on when it started, you can use something like this spreadsheet, which is a rough approximation, and try to work out, well, where am I on this green line, and am I investing too late or too early? Because really, if you're too early, you don't know if it's going to take off. If it's too late, you're essentially paying for the early investors, and you may not see your initial outlay ever paid back. So I think the best time to invest is somewhere here, where really you have assurance that that the contract is popular and people are going to keep putting money into it, but you're going to see a return on your investment. So that's where I want to get to in my analysis, and in these videos, the information that I share with you is to try and do an assessment of these other ROI apps, because there are sure a lot of them coming out every day, and to try and see which ones are the most profitable and the less risky based on this kind of analysis. So it's just a kind of glimpse of things to come. Another thing I wanted to talk about in respect to Maticstaker is these plans that they have. So the first time I looked at this, it didn't make any sense to me why anyone would try this premium plan, just given, well, you're getting a lower daily earnings rate. So why wouldn't you just take the lowest risk 14-day plan, and if it works, you basically reinvest. And so maybe I thought, oh, at the time, maybe I'm ignorant, maybe I don't understand what this is telling me. I'll invest a bit and see what happens. But no, I think that's borne out. If you went and invested in the 28 days at the start, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to get your investment back. So I think that the case with these ROI apps is always choose the lowest uh, risk, or the lowest staking period. So if you were in there for 14 days, in there early, in there around the middle, before the middle, you would have gotten some money out, and you would have made a nice return. Wouldn't have been as high as 20%, but it would be a good return. If you went in one of the gold um, options, you would have gotten lucky on day one, and you would have made some return that is better than the silver. But I don't think that's ever worth the risk, because 14 days is a long time in one of these ROI apps. I think we can establish that 28 days, a full month, is pretty much the maximum life cycle you're going to get at a reasonable rate of return. I think that if I were going into any of these, I would just choose even the savings package. Even though the ROI is much lower, you're going to get some money back every day, and you're going to control your risk. You're not gonna end up at the end of it with the jackpot of 1,300%. But I'll tell you what, 291% or anything close to that, anything over 100%, maybe 105%, 5% return, 10% return is amazing for a 14-day investment. So I would say, if you're looking at any of these, definitely get one where you can get your ROI back on a daily basis, or if not daily, on the shortest possible time period, because that's the only way you're going to be able to control risk and make sure you get a return back. So this includes for other things like Stable One, or Daily Matic, I think, is another one where you can get some amount paid each day. That is definitely the way to go, rather than try to lock it in and hit the maximum jackpot, because you've got no way of controlling your risk. You could get lucky, you might not get lucky. In fact, it's very likely that you don't get lucky. I think Maticstaker had quite was one of these ROI apps that may have been best positioned for someone in a long-term plan, because it had probably low take up front. I think there was a lot of resistance to this kind of DAP, and it saw definitely a huge uptick later with a up to 14 million at this point staked. So if there was ever a chance that you'd hit that 21 days, it's probably on something like Maticstaker, but unfortunately you will miss out on that 28 days, given where we stand today at the about to lose that contract balance. So what have we learnt? daily returns. Make sure they are sustainable. None of these are sustainable forever. None of these are sustainable probably beyond 28 days, unless they get a huge investment in the second half. But you can see as you go down, the contract balance increases. Those daily withdrawals just spike astronomically, and those daily withdrawals need to be covered. They need to be covered by the contract balance. And so that's the reason for that curve going up and dropping down. So it doesn't matter what interest rate is, it's always going to run out of money. That's how Ponzi schemes work. They will always run out of money. The question is, how do you control your risk and make a profitable investment? So make sure the interest rate is low. Make sure that your term is short. Don't go into 21 days, 28 days lockups. Avoid even 14-day lockups unless you know that you're early and that it's a sustainable DAPP for 14 days. Make sure you look at the contract. Make sure you understand the audit. Make sure you understand what you're actually buying into. Um, that's another thing that you need to take into account. And lastly, I'd say, look, Trix price coming soon. I mean, I've heard people say, oh, but don't worry, the contract will run out of money, but then people will get Trix. And Trix is this amazing new deflationary coin that will earn you a lifetime of interest. I mean, look, that's a great promise. But what is it? What is Trix? It's just a token. Is it more valuable than any other token? Look, if I could guess, I'd say that it's completely worthless. Who is going to buy a random token that people have gotten just for staking and losing their money in a Ponzi scheme? It doesn't make sense. Like, it's called tricks. It's not rock solid. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Maybe they do go out and release tricks and go through this whole thing where I think I looked at this the other day and there was a some sort of thing where you or earn interest and it compounds, but this is even more high risk than Maticstaker. This is you're speculating on the value of a random token that has no utility and no other inherent value. So don't rely on this kind of thing. It's not even real at this stage. It's just a promise. So don't take a promise as some sort of guarantee that you're going to actually make something back. I would say that very few, if anyone, is going to make any money out of tricks. So only look at really if you're choosing an ROI app and you're looking at whether it's profitable, whether you're going to make money. Look at the contract, look at the audit, understand when you look at the audit, understand what this high issue is. This is a high issue. It's an ROI app. Your principal cannot be withdrawn. You cannot get your initial investment back. You are getting paid from the deposits of other users. You need to understand that. This is not a rug pull. This is not, you can argue as to whether it's a scam, but this is not a surprise. This should not be a surprise to anyone who's invested in Maticstaker or any of these other ROI apps. Make sure you're educated. Make sure you do your own research and understand that. So I guess in closing out this video, I hope it's been helpful. Hope it's taught you a thing or two. And if you have lost money on Maticstaker, that's I hope you've learned a lesson from that. I put in some money here. I've got my MATIC investment here coming into the money in 3 days. So we're not going to get to that. It's only a small investment, and as you can see, I already did make some money on an early deposit. So I'm out there just a few less than 10 MATIC, so it's not a big deal for me, but it's also a good lesson because I think this has taught me a lot about ROI DApps and how they work, and I'm really excited to get into some more detail and really try and produce some content that shows how they work, tries to model I guess these actual curves as they happen for each ROI app, tries to model how long they'll last and whether that risk to reward ratio is there. So this spreadsheet already provides some basic features there, but I'd like to start linking these to APIs start getting actual feeds in from the contracts. It's all easily doable within Google Sheets from what I've seen. And then I'll be able to say, well, okay, let's take a look at stable one. Where are we on the curve? How much life has it got left? How much, are we at the right time to invest? If a new contract comes on, I can add that on and say, well, how early are we? Are we too early? Are we just on time? And try to use actual data there to make some decisions, and hopefully that kind of information will help people watching this channel as well. So I think that is all I had to say. And once again, if you lost money on Maticstaker, that's I'm sorry that you have. Um, and I hope you take that as a lesson to really understand what these are all about. These ROI DApps are all about. I think it's possible to make money. I think they pose a really interesting opportunity in that they are predictable to a very high degree. All the information is there to make a decision, to make a risk-based decision. Whereas when you talk about other not even DGen apps, other DGen apps like say Titano, you've got a risk-based decision on, well, what's the value of the underlying asset going to be worth. With even with things like Bitcoin and with investing in Matic itself, you have a decision to be made, well, a risk decision to be made. Well, you don't know how much it's going to be worth. At the end of the day, you're making a risk-based decision based on what you think it's going to be worth in the future. The great thing that I like about these ROI DApps is that you can make a real risk-based decision based on having essentially not all the information, because you don't know if people are going to stop investing, but most of the information. And I think you can come up with a good risk range there and work out if based on the actual data, you're going to make money or not. And I think that poses a really interesting opportunity. And the last thing I'll say is just with the more and more of these DApps that come out and the more people that get exposed, it will be really interesting to see how that plays out. Do people lose confidence in ROI DApps? Do they get more savvy to them? A lot of people I think will just say, oh, Maticstaker was the one that failed. They won't really understand that it was a ROI DApp and what that means, and it basically played out exactly as expected. They'll take away the fact that it's a scam and not really understand it. So will people get more savvy? Will they start to understand? Will this curve kind of adjust? Will we see a drop off later on as more people understand what these are about? So interesting times ahead. I hope you will join me on the channel. Please like and subscribe and all that good YouTube stuff if you want to see more content like this. Before I sign off, I'm just going to take a quick look at Maticstaker and see if it has died yet. Not quite. We've in the last, what's it been, about 28 minutes that I've been recording this video. It's dropped down to 100,000. It's dropped down nearly 100,000 in contract balance. I think we'll be able to see the end by the time this video uploads, or shortly thereafter in the next hour or so. So thanks for watching. Sorry for the little ramble at the end. Hopefully this has been useful, and see you next time.